The whole title to Darwin's book, The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or the Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. Ooh, favored races. Charlie, that's not politically correct. Well, back in the 1800s, it was. You see, back in the 1800s, nearly everybody was a racist. A lot of the advanced nations were going to these third world countries to try to colonize them, right? So they could steal their gold and rubies and diamonds for pay the guys a nickel a week, you know, to work for them. You have to understand the climate of the 1800s, particularly the early 1800s, when evolution became popular, before Darwin ever came on the scene. Charlie Darwin's grandpa, Erasmus Darwin, came up with everything Darwin did. Darwin never gave credit to his grandpa, by the way, but I'm sure he stole all the ideas from him. But Charlie Darwin, when his book came out in the mid-1850s, 1859, racism was popular. It was acceptable to be a racist. Today it's unacceptable. Darwin thought natives were just advanced animals. Well, that fits with the times. We had slavery in America in 1859, didn't we? Yeah. Civil War hadn't started yet. They bought and sold them like cows. Matter of fact, they packed them onto ships and brought them over here. They calculated how many they could get on the ship. They estimated that 1/2 of them would die en route to the New World. They chained them to the deck and left them for 2 weeks. I mean, that's where they slept, that's where they ate, that's where they went to the bathroom. They didn't move, chained to the deck for 2 weeks. 1/2 of them died. It's no big deal. Just like cows, throw it away, get a new one. That's the way they thought, folks. What's the matter with these people? Well, the problem is their philosophy. They think these people are inferior, and you always act according to your belief. What you believe is extremely important. But be careful what philosophy you have. Man, if your slave gets out of line, beat him. If he dies, oh well, go buy another one, right? Wasn't that the attitude? That these people are inferior? By the way, that's still the attitude of some groups today in America, like the KKK. I met a fellow from the KKK one time. We got talking about, I had a bus route in an all-black neighborhood, brought kids to church, had a wonderful time. Very friendly folks, get invited in. I mean, 17 years I drove a bus, church bus in a black neighborhood. Great ministry. This fellow from the KKK told me, black people don't have souls. He told me that to my face. I don't know if they all believe that, but that fellow did. Racism was prevalent during the mid-1800s, and when Darwin's book came out, at last, a scientific justification for what we've been doing already. Sold all 1,200 copies in the first day, first printing. There might have been a cover up there. They think maybe one guy arranged to have them all bought so it would look like a runaway bestseller. But anyway, they did sell them all the first day. 1,200 copies. Had to reprint it. Racism was popular. Darwin also thought women were inferior. Charlie Darwin said, "A married man is a poor slave, worse than a Negro." If a professor said that today in your local university, how long would he keep his job? Or his life? And yet Darwin is considered one of the saints, isn't he? He was a racist and a chauvinist. By the way, he finally married his first cousin, Emma Wedgwood. Nobody else would marry him. Would you marry this guy? Strange man. These two folks had an interesting job. Back about the turn of the century back here, between 18 and 1900, Darwin's theory had become very popular. 1859, the book came out, and many people began pushing it and promoting it. Thomas Huxley, and I mean, lots of folks were pushing this evolution theory. And it kind of took over the world in the next 20 years. The world was ready for it anyway. They were looking for a way to get rid of God. There was the right climate when Darwin came along. But Darwin said we should find thousands and millions of missing links. Well, they couldn't find any. So it became very popular to look for missing links. These two folks went to Australia, and they got the Australian Aborigines and said, you know what, that looks like a missing link. Their jaws are bigger. Well, the reason their jaws are bigger is because the Aborigines don't use hardly any tools, and they use their jaws like a vise to clamp down on stuff. When they want to strip the bark off a tree branch, they clamp on it and pull the bark off. You use your jaw muscles a lot like that. The muscle pulls on the bone. The bone responds by getting bigger. Any bodybuilder will tell you the more you build your muscles, the bigger the bones get. So the Aborigines have big jawbones because they use their jaws a lot. That's why. But these guys thought, no, they're a missing link. So they went down to, the whole article's right here, published in Creation magazine, Creation ex nihilo. This is the 1992 March to May edition about what happened to the people in Australia, the Aborigines, Darwin's body snatchers. They went down and began robbing the graves of the Aborigines because they could sell the bones as museum displays. Pretty soon they ran out of graves to rob, so they started shooting the Aborigines. They rounded them up and shot them. The police were involved in this. A missionary, a New South Wales missionary, was the horrified witness to the slaughter by mounted police of a group of dozens of Aborigines, men, women, and children. 45 heads were then boiled down and the best 10 skulls packed off for overseas. Here's the article right here. Shot them, cut their heads off, boiled them down, and sold the bones. Why? Well, the Smithsonian was buying a bunch of them. They have 33,000 in their basement right now. You could make big money. If you had a human skull that looked slightly deformed for some reason, man, it'll sell big. They were desperate for evidence for evolution. That's what happened, folks, back about the turn of the century, looking for these missing links. Matter of fact, they got pretty desperate. They took a fellow named Ota Benga away from his wife and family, 2 kids, and put him in a cage with chimpanzees. He was a pygmy from Africa. He was part of an evolution display. Did you know in 1904, in the St. Louis World's Fair, they had pygmies as an evolution display? Go to the St. Louis Zoo. Ask them, hey, where was the pygmy display set up? They'll show you. This was part of the evolution display, 1904. Talk about racism. Oh, yeah. Karl Marx was greatly affected by this theory. Karl Marx developed his theories about the same time Darwin was developing his. But Karl Marx would have been just a little footnote in history. Nobody would have paid any attention to Karl Marx if it hadn't been for Charles Darwin's theory coming along. See, Karl Marx claimed to be a Christian. I don't know if he was or not, but at age 17, he wrote a beautiful paper about how much he loved the Lord. And then Karl Marx went off to college. And in college, a professor turned him away from Christianity. You know, I wonder how many Christian kids have gone off to secular colleges and had their faith destroyed. It seems like every secular college or university has a couple of professors who they think it's their duty in life to ruin Christians, don't they? I remember when I went to college, first day in sociology class, first day, the professor said, are there any Christians in the room? I raised my hand. I was 19, I got saved when I was 16. He said, I looked around, I said, I guess I'm the only one, sir. He said, Mr. Hovind, you a Christian? I said, yes, sir. He said, let me ask you a question. Can God do anything? I said, yes, sir. By the way, that's not true. There are many things God cannot do. He cannot learn. He already knows it all. He said, Mr. Hovind, let me ask you a question. If God can do everything, can God make a rock so big he can't lift it? I said, I don't know, sir, but I know he can make one so big you can't lift it. No problem. You know, they use questions like that to destroy some kid's faith. By the way, I've learned a good answer to that one. Jesus often answered a question with a question, right? Especially a dumb question like that. If somebody asks me that question, can God make a rock so big he can't lift it? I'll ask him this question. I'll say, have you ever had geometry? You ever studied geometry? They typically will say yes. I say, tell me, can you tell me the definition of a line? Yeah. A line goes forever in both directions. Very good. Now, can you tell me the definition of a ray? They'll say, oh, yes. A ray goes forever in one direction. Oh, very good. Now, let me see if I got this straight. A line goes forever in both directions, and a ray goes forever in one direction. All right, let me ask you a question. Which one's longer? You tell me which one's longer, and I'll tell you about the rock. Ah, yeah. But there are professors who think it's their duty in life to destroy every Christian that comes through their class. They're out there, folks. And I don't recommend you send your kid off to a secular university. unless you're positive they can handle it, because an awful lot of them don't handle it. Awful lot of them get ruined. Bunches of them. You say, yeah, but if he goes to a Christian college, he won't be able to get a good job. Oh, now we know what's important to you, don't we? George. Oh, Abe. My wife didn't find that one. Now we know, don't we? Money more important? Yeah. Well, Karl Marx got ruined in college. He became a real scoffer, skeptic. Matter of fact, Karl Marx's whole philosophy revolved around this theory of evolution. Karl Marx's book, Das Kapital, he tried to, this is the title page, dedicated to Charles Darwin, from a sincere admirer, Karl Marx. See, Karl Marx knew communism wouldn't make it any place as a philosophy without evolution. You have to get rid of God for communism to work, because communism is the opposite of Christianity in almost every way. Karl Marx knew that. Karl Marx talked about evolution in his speeches, I mean, over and over. His whole philosophy was evolution. Karl Marx later in life said, my objective in life is to dethrone God and destroy capitalism. Nice guy, huh? He got ruined. You know what really happened? His philosophy changed. The devil wants to destroy your philosophy. The way you look at the world, that's what he wants to destroy. Karl Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto in 1846. Everything is anti-Christian about this. Abolish private property. By the way, that's the real purpose behind the environmental movement. It has nothing to do with saving the environment. They want to abolish private property. They want to make you get a permit for everything. You're going to cut down a tree. You got to get a permit. Well, you're going to get a permit to mow your grass someday too? Where's this going to stop? Where do rights come from? Huh? Are tree rights equal with human rights? The evolutionist would think so, wouldn't he? After all, we evolved from the trees, right? Man, go hug one, like Al Gore. That's their philosophy. The problem is that they are very consistent in their behavior based upon their faulty philosophy. I can understand why they go hug the trees. It's because they believe in evolution. I like trees. We got a bunch in my yard, and I like trees, and I've planted lots of trees. I don't think I ought to go cut down every tree. But it's a crop like corn or grass. You ought to be able to cut it if you need to. Especially if it's on your property. You see, property rights are very important to God. The Bible has a whole system set up where everybody got some property, and if you were lazy or a dud at managing your stuff and you lost it, you got it back in 50 years. The year of Jubilee, right? Ownership of property is extremely important. Our founding fathers made a tragic mistake. They had a slogan they used: life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. What on earth is that? You know what the original slogan was? Life, liberty, and property.